Okay, Stilly and Paulie on a football show. Jared Stillman in for Braden Gall. Paul Kuharsky is here, as he always is on a Monday. First of all, PK, thank you for the accommodating time change to 3 p.m. Central Time today for me on Stillman and Company to hop right over here.
Easily
How
done.
are you, Mr. Kuharsky?
I'm well, thank you. Good to see you. Easily done on the time switch, not a problem.
Okay, we want to remind everybody that a football show is presented by Sinkers Beverages. You know what Braden always says, a local beverage store. I'm not a huge drinker, but for the people out there that love their high-end bourbon, Sinkers Beverages does that. If you love your high-end wine, Sinkers Beverages does that. And, of course, people like me, I'm a THC drink kind of guy. It's just how I am. But then the problem is when I have the THC drinks, I then end up hitting the snacks, and then Paul always makes fun of me for that. So it is what it is. But Sinkers Beverages, your local Nashville liquor station, or however you should call it.
You're inspiring Go Forth to drink. You make him want to drink.
There is something to that. Okay, loaded show. We've got OTAs to react to. We've got Paul's reaction to my reaction on Carnell Tate that we will get into.
Shameful.
And we've got a blockbuster trade that happened today in the NFL. And supposedly a blockbuster trade that's going to happen probably while we're doing this show today. A.J. Brown to the New England Patriots. So, Paulie, where do you want to start today?
Well, let's go Myles Garrett. The Rams were already probably Super Bowl favorites, yeah? NFC favorites, maybe? This has to throw them to the top. I don't see – maybe you're picking Seattle in the NFC to repeat. It's very hard to do. Rams are loaded. And I think they win this trade in a big way. Do the Browns not factor in where the draft pick is going to be in any of this? So they're getting, 28 to 32 in the first round, and then they're getting a low second rounder, and then they're getting a low third rounder. And Jared Verse, a very good player, but this is for the best defensive player in football. They did not get enough of a return here in my eyes, no matter what the financial savings are. You have to get more bodies than that, and you have to get more high-ranking draft capital than that. I think the Rams are really they engineer the league in a lot of ways now. They got the 3 wide thing going. Now they're getting the 2 tight thing going. They got the trading draft picks thing going, and they came back to earth with that. Now they're doing it again. And the Browns look like fools, which is common territory for them.
I don't have a problem with the return the Browns got there. I really like Verse. I think Verse is a really good player. He's a young player. I would say that if Verse were to be traded straight up, it probably would be a first and a second or 2 firsts for him. So if Sauce Gardner is 2 firsts, I think Verse is probably 2
but we know Sauce Gardner was overpriced. That was catastrophic.
I don't have a problem with this. Garrett had a no trade clause in his deal, so he could have vetoed anything. How many times do the Browns need to have Myles Garrett get 100 sacks in a season and win 5 games? They are clearly going to let Deshaun Watson play quarterback this year, and then they're going to try to draft a quarterback next year. This gives them more ammo, perhaps, to be able to do that. I'm fine with it from the Browns standpoint. To your point about the Rams, I don't think it's particularly close. On paper, they're the best team in the NFC because I thought they and Seattle were right there with each other. Seattle loses Kenneth Walker, and the Rams get the 2 corners from Kansas City plus Myles Garrett. I don't think it's particularly close anymore between them and Seattle. I think the Rams are by far the favorites in the NFC and thus the favorites in the NFL.
As long as Puka's got his head on straight, and it seems like he probably does. Yeah, and I don't know. Is there an AFC favorite? You got some of the best teams in the league. Some of the best teams in the AFC are in major transition. You don't know about Mahomes' knee. I think people are just sweeping that under the rug. Buffalo's got a new coach. Baltimore's got a new coach. All of these teams that are, linchpins are looking for the little extra to throw them over the top. But oftentimes when you switch from that stability, it doesn't throw you over the top. It goes the other direction. So they're looking to go against the grain. AFC's down as far as I'm concerned. So, you need another breakthrough team like the Patriots were and to sustain it a little bit better and to face more adversity going. So, advantage NFC and the Rams really looking. I mean, if you were going to bet on the Rams, you should have done it for this trade. There were some early rumblings this morning. I meant to go look at if that had started to turn the tide, but I'm sure their number is much less favorable this afternoon than it was this morning and certainly last night.
Well, think about this in the AFC. The AFC has that gauntlet of 4 starting quarterbacks, but Mahomes is hurt. And I thought that Kansas City's roster was really bad last year outside of Mahomes, and their best receiver is in jail right now. Like
they're not automatic bounce back. And I talked to some people that were kind of speculating. Some of this was media. Some of this was one league guy that I talked to at either the combine or league meetings who thought it was more of a 2-year replenishment for Kansas City to make the full bid to get back. And certainly with what they lost, got a lot of youth. Well, Kansas City has a way of accelerating some youth, but you can't count on Kelsey for anything really now. It's more of a farewell tour kind of thing. And, I'm not struck by any huge offset. They're more renowned this offseason for what they lost than what they gained.
Yeah, and Rashee Rice is in jail, which certainly is a problem for them. Buffalo has
not a problem for them unless he's unavailable. I mean, they're okay
true
with their guys being in jail. That's not a problem for them.
But Buffalo and Baltimore have new coaches. And then Cincinnati, who has an elite quarterback, I think they need a new coach. And they lost Trey Hendrickson, and they don't play any defense. So I think the best team in the AFC right now on paper is the Chargers.
It's the Chargers or the Bengals year. It really is. The door is open. Since a lot of people are going to pick Cincinnati, I've been on the Cincinnati train too long, and I pick the Chargers every year to do well. I'm done with those teams. I just don't have faith that they have the DNA to make the breakthrough. I think Cincinnati's just lacking something, and I don't know. I do think Herbert's capable, so maybe they'll finally get it together. The injury bug really killed them. They're like the Titans were a couple of years ago when everybody just blamed the training room on everything. I'd love to hear what Chargers fans, if there are any, have to say about that trend there.
There are not any. What do you think about Denver?
I don't like Denver. I do like the Texans, but the Texans have to play a very certain way, and it's hard to win a playoff run, with defense and running. And I've lost complete faith in Stroud. They have to get Stroud back to a, don't screw it up and make a couple plays level. And I don't have faith that in 3 high pressure playoff games, he can do it 3 times.
And then there's Jacksonville that does bring back the quarterback, the coach, the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. I mean, they went toe-to-toe in the playoffs last year with the Bills before they lost. They crushed Denver at Denver at the end of the season last year. There's something with that Trevor Lawrence, Jacoby Myers thing. I think Jacksonville's got a shot this year, but they also could be a one-hit wonder.
I do too, because it's so wide open. You can see the path for anybody. You'll know this better than I do because you have better institutional memory for such things. When's the last time the Jaguars did something 2 years in a row? Did something good 2 years in a row? They're so up and down. Like every time they take a big step forward, it feels like they don't sustain it. Going back to Tom Coughlin when they were a good organization, it feels like. And so I suspect they're going to be one of those 1 step forward, 1 step back, and I'd look for them next year again.
I don't think Jacksonville was good in 06 and 07. I think they were just good in 07. So to your point about back-to-back, I think it goes back to like that run they had from 97 to 99 where they were pretty good. And then in 2000, they totally crapped the bed and they stunk. So it's been a long time since Jacksonville was good 2 years in a row.
And that, I'm big on this team DNA thing. Like I think despite change of regimes and everything, it's kind of like in the threading of your uniform fabric. And until you really wring it out of there, I just don't bet on stuff to happen that hasn't happened until it happens.
I think that takes us now to the second potential blockbuster. We had the first blockbuster earlier today. I think we're just waiting until it's officially announced that A.J. Brown is going from the Philadelphia Eagles to the New England Patriots for a 2028 first-round pick. What's your reaction with that? And are you surprised by the compensation? Because it's one thing to see a first-rounder a year out. I think it's kind of hard to see a first rounder basically 3 years out, which is what this was because the deal was done before the draft, most likely.
So it's a 2028?
That's what the reports are indicating it's going to be. And Schefter said it. Jeff McClain has said it. And I guess that's kind of the report that's been picked up.
Yeah, I don't even really know how much better that is for the Patriots. Like, it's kind of like a rip off the Band-Aid and get it over with instead of have it looming over your head. I mean, if you're right on the verge, and they probably feel like they're right on the verge because of what they did, but everybody knows this is going to be a step back year for the Patriots, just based on the schedule and based on some deficiencies that they have on the offensive line and the like. And Drake May's not going anywhere in a year and everything. And AJ Brown's getting older and everything. You might use that 2028 pick for the guy that you're going to replace AJ Brown with. So I would rather see him do the 2027 pick, though maybe they're thinking 2027 pick is not going to be as good as the 2028 pick. So it would make sense in that regard. He's a complicated guy. Vrabel certainly has the best chance to keep him uncomplicated the longest. It's only a matter of time, right? So can you keep him in check for 2.5 years? The best chance is there. Will he make them better? I mean, he's a better player than Diggs was, and they got, reasonable return out of Diggs. Helped take him to a Super Bowl in one season. So, I mean, I like the potential for him to help Drake May and help that team and manage the headache. But I wonder if a one is a little expensive because other teams would be scared of the headache to a degree. So you raise an interesting point there. But it feels like a win-win. That pick's going to be, the Patriots aren't going to be great, but that pick's not going to be higher than 18.
I think the Patriots have a chance. Now their schedule is going to be much tougher than it was last year. And I don't know if Will Campbell is good enough to play against elite pass rushers in the NFL, but I think AJ is going to have a good year this year for 3 reasons. Number one, AJ is going to be motivated. And when AJ's got a chip on his shoulder, he just plays better. And whether it was trying to play for that big contract or motivated because the Titans traded him or whatever, when he's motivated, he plays better. Then the second thing is I do think that there's a respect level with Vrabel and AJ. I mean, AJ's the kind of guy who, as you said, he's a different kind of guy. And I don't know what you would say your relationship with AJ was. AJ and I kind of, we even talked about it at the Super Bowl, he and I, but like we kind of have like a mutual respect for one another, but we kind of get on each other, call each other out kind of thing. I think he likes that.
You saw the guy, 5 times in your life? 6? You can't make it like you got a relationship with him.
No. AJ told me he'd watch a show every day.
That's not a relationship, him watching the show.
That's a relationship with me and my takes.
Goodness gracious.
So I like AJ.
Just don't
I think AJ likes
what having
me.
a relationship with a player means.
My point is I think AJ respects people that push him more than Nick Sirianni, who I don't think AJ had any respect for. And Vrabel's going to get that out of him. And then I think Drake May's better than Jalen Hurts. So because I think Drake May is better at getting the ball to AJ than Jalen Hurts was, I think AJ is going to have a big year. And like we said, I think the AFC is so wide open. I think this move could help New England in 26. I also think it's something that in 2028, they could be sitting there saying, oh, crap. AJ Brown's knees are completely shot. Our window is closing, and we don't have a first-round pick because we wanted to trade it 3 years out.
Yeah, but this is what teams do. I mean, teams that are kind of in the thick of it, you're measuring the trade-off. And you're taking a guy for 2 years knowing that the third year is going to be bad. That's the intrigue of a 27 pick and 28 pick instead of a 27 pick. But yeah, are you getting 3 solid years out of a guy? I think virtually everyone would bet the third year is not going to be good, or he might produce, but there's going to be a locker room headache or all of that. That's why he's on the market.
Where are you on the May front? Do you think May is?
I like him a lot.
I do too.
I think he's legit. I think he's going to be a top, 6 or 8 quarterback for a good stretch.
Okay, let's get to OTAs then. We've had 2 open OTAs, PK. We were both at the one on Thursday that the Titans, or Friday that the Titans had last week. I was very, very impressed for the second week in a row in Carnell Tate. What was your takeaway from OTAs?
Well, look, at the first OTA, he was fantastic. He had 6 catches. He had 3 touchdowns. It was like a flawless day. And then you and everybody else in the market was like, oh, this guy's it. He's flawless. And then at the second practice, where he dropped 2 out of 4 balls thrown his way, you only saw the 2 great catches. And everybody missed the 2 drops, which the Jared Stillman I know would have been like, you can't have the 4th pick in the draft dropping 2 balls. Those are 2 drive killers. You're off the field. The defense, you're punting. I don't want to see Tommy Townsend out there. I'm there to see Carnell Tate. But what you said is, oh my God, 2 more catches on the sideline. This guy's going to Canton. He's all pro. This is the best receiver they've ever had. I don't understand how the drops, just nobody mentioned it. So we've seen him get
give me the context of the
targets. We've seen him get 10 targets, and he dropped 2. And that's part of the story. So I'm not a love guys, hate guys, whatever. I'm a tell what happened guy. And in his second practice, early on, he was not good. He dropped 1 ball that was behind him that an elite receiver catches. He dropped another ball outright facing the quarterback. That's an inexcusable drop for a big-time receiver. Then he made 2 fantastic sideline catches, the likes of which the Titans don't make. The one running where he extended his hand, another one where he went up, also which the Jared Stillman I know would say, he's beating Micah Robinson, and Micah Robinson, was trash with the Packers, and if he's on this roster, the Titans are in trouble with their depth. No mention that he's beating Micah Robinson. He might as well be beating Deion Sanders the way it's going down. And so
Ray Wilson
day was an up and down day, the likes of which you'd like to see better. But also, I thought I used to hear Jared Stillman say OTAs mean nothing, generally speaking, and a receiver of Carnell Tate's reputation and ilk should be dominant at those practices. So he's been basically what you should expect, a few more drops than you'd like to see from a guy. And this is what he should be. And here's the thing about OTAs. They don't feed a show like yours where something's got to be red hot or ice cold. It's a measure the progress in steps thing, which is for people that want to read somebody like me that'll go a mile deep and an inch wide instead of somebody like you that's going to go a mile wide and an inch deep.
Okay. So I have a lot of reaction on all of your breakdowns. My first thing is I want to know the context of these drops. How
did you not see him? You're staring at him. You can't take your eyes off him. It's like Diana Rossini and panties to you.
That's why I want to know. That's why I want to know the context, because I didn't see him. And you said to me on the sideline of practice, you were like, did you not see the drops? And I'm like, no, I didn't see him.
He also dropped 1 in drills against air.
So I don't care about that. I don't care about the warm-up periods. Now, when he dropped them, was that just like, they were installing the offense 5 or 11 on 0, or was it in 7 on 7 that he dropped it?
I think they were both in team. One might've been in 7 on 7. I think they were both on team. One, he was crossing left to right a little bit, kind of, turned like this, largely facing the quarterback. It was a little bit behind him. So he would have had to have caught it here and it went off his hand. The other one, he was kind of stopped and facing the quarterback and he just flat out dropped.
So I didn't see that. And I was standing right there.
You don't know how to watch an entire practice. And
I was standing right there. Now I skipped I didn't go for the warm-up period because I don't care about all that. But the actual team periods, one of them was, he was going one way and the ball went the other way. And I put that on Cam because I don't think Cam's very accurate. But I've been to 2 practices. I did not want them to draft Carnell Tate because Carnell Tate ran a 4.52 in the 40-yard dash. And the general manager I used to work with and Bill Polian and these old school guys, they care about that. And that was enough for me to say, no, thank you. In the 2 OTA practices that I've been to, he has flashed elite, in my opinion, from what I saw, because I didn't see the drops you're talking about, elite hands. He catches the ball like butter melting in his hands.
Oh, he's got great hands.
Am I not supposed to be excited about that or say that?
Yeah. But I mean, in mentioning that he has great hands, you might mention, despite his great hands, he dropped 2 passes. But you're just leaving that out of the story. So you've got Nashville hyped in a way where they don't know that he dropped 2 balls on the day that he made 2 great catches. Is that not a relevant piece of it? So be a better practice watcher, or be better. You're not liked, so people aren't going to share things with you like we do amongst ourselves because you're not a beat guy.
I would just say that when it comes to OTAs, when you say, hey, OTAs are not good. I remember 2 years ago, you came up to me at OTAs. It was the first day of OTAs. And if you'll remember, we weren't allowed to say this publicly, but T'Vondre Sweat every day at the at OTAs that year was just sitting there on the bike, like behind the glass in the workout room. And T'Vondre Sweat was biking maybe 1 mile an hour for the entire practice. And you said to me, you looked at me and you said, what kind of story are you going to make out of nothing today? And I was going to be like, I'm going to make a big deal about the fact that T'Vondre Sweat, who has a reputation for being lazy and unreliable, is not out on the field for the first OTA. And that concerns me after the Titans vowed that he was not lazy and that he would be reliable.
You hit a home run on that, and that's what we'll hear about. Listen, I'm not saying there aren't indicators at this thing, but not all of them come through. So give me the list of everything you said about every OTA, and we'll see the batting average, which we know is below 200.
Well, remember when everybody told me not to get worked up because Traylon Burks wasn't in shape enough to make it through.
But again, I want the whole list. I don't want you to cherry pick the ones you got right. And sure, it's a bad sign that T'Vondre Sweat was on the bike and that Traylon Burks had asthma. Those are obvious. And it's a good sign that Carnell Tate's showing good hands. I'm not saying he's a bust. I'm saying mention he dropped some balls. And I'm not saying he has bad hands. He clearly has great hands. But if you're coming out of that and you think you're telling fans what the story is, and you didn't see the 2 drops, you didn't do a good job that day.
So if I didn't see the drops, then I will put that on me. Again, I don't care about the drop in the warm-up period, but if there were team period drops that were Carnell Tate's fault, put it on me, Paul. That I'll accept. But all I can go off of is what I see and what I've seen in the 2 practices.
How do 10 passes change your conviction that much? This is all you. It's a hot take thing. You're convicted that it's a bad pick, and you see 10 throws, and that changes your opinion. That you're not a very convicted guy. You're just a man of the moment. You're a man of the moment. Just admit it.
Again, it's new information to me. I haven't seen Carnell Tate in person. So I'm going off of the fact
at Ohio State for 3 years.
He ran a 4.52, although it was disputed by Adam Schefter that he ran a 4.52 at the combine. He ran a 4.52, and all these Hall of Fame general managers like Bill Polian say you don't draft a receiver who runs slower than a 4.5 in the first 3 rounds. They drafted him 4th overall. I said, oh my God, what are we doing?
That Jared Stillman loves more than a former general manager. We
with a gold jacket,
over affection for Floyd Reese, but that spilled into every former general manager is God with his opinions. What do you think Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne ran? Were they fast enough for you?
Yes, they were faster than a 4.5 because Polian said that they did not take guys inside of the first 3 rounds that ran slower than a 4.5. He said, we had a computer that if we tried to do it would say, which I thought was actually pretty funny that they needed a computer to tell them that.
It's based on Bill Polian's problems getting onto a conference call that he had a computer doing anything.
Well, he probably had somebody else using the computer for him, if I had to guess. I'm just going to say,
I'm making a big deal out of it. I'm just saying, give the whole picture. And you're not very convicted if 10 passes changes your mind on a guy. I can only imagine if Cam Ward completes his first 10 passes this year, everyone should brace themselves. Jared's going to do a complete turnaround on Cam. Also, Cam threw all these balls that Tate caught. So you must be really turning around on Cam. Good.
Well,
good job, Cam.
I'm glad you said that because Titan fans are all mad at me because I said the ball that Cam threw to Tate that Tate caught with one hand, I thought was an inaccurate pass that was overthrown. And that's what Cam does. I think Cam is a pitcher who has a hard time throwing strikes. I thought that was an inaccurate throw that Tate made a great adjustment on and stretched out like Gumby in order to be able to catch the ball. And Titan fans are like, that was a perfectly thrown ball, Jared.
So it wasn't a perfectly thrown ball, but it's a ball thrown well enough for his guy to go get and make a play on. And that's what the Titans need Cam Ward to do this season is throw balls that his new guys, Tate and Robinson can go make plays on. So that's a plus play by everybody.
I'm just worried when it comes to Cam that there's going to be too many this season because I keep looking for the accuracy to be better. And I think it's the same as it was last year, which is, 1 out of every 4 passes Cam can put on the money. And then all the other ones, there was one in the first OTA where he threw it so far behind Wan'Dale Robinson. I was worried Robinson was going to tear something by trying to spin around in the air to try to lean backwards to catch it. He's just too inaccurate for my liking. And he doesn't have an elite trait like Lamar Jackson's athleticism or the combination of Cam Newton's size and speed to be able to overcome that inaccuracy. And I don't see it improving. And so when you say if he completes his first 10 passes, Jared will do a 180, I don't think he'll complete his first 10 passes because I don't think he's very accurate throwing the ball.
I don't love his accuracy either. I love his quick release, which I do think is, borderline elite. And I think here's a spot in OTAs where you're not going to see how much better he is because they're installing option routes, which are a new thing that they weren't running last year. Quite frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't been worse and that we haven't seen more picks. And this is my concern with Calvin Ridley, who I think you'll agree with me, has some mental slips along the way. I thought a defender was there, so I stepped out on 3rd and 2, a yard short of the sticks because I thought there was a cornerback there. If you're counting on Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley to both make the same decisions on every option route, I have some concerns that we're going to see some mistakes there, maybe more from the receiver than from the quarterback. But I was asking a lot of questions about these option routes. I'm gonna write some about that. That's something they need to have down by opening day, and that's a lot of reps between now and then.
One thing I was thinking about at OTAs is not to say that these coaches aren't hands-on because every coach, they're kind of hands-on, but Dable, and maybe it's because of the proximity of where we stand now and where Dable is on the sideline, but we get a good firsthand view of Brian Dable coaching in the team periods of how he's got the play sheet in front of him. He's got the headset on, he's calling the game or whatever. And he's very animated on those sidelines. But I was thinking about Dable and I was thinking about how much of a learning period this is for Dable about what Cam actually can do so that when he starts to build game plans, say for the Jets, he's going into it with hey, I rather call these plays for Cam and these throws for Cam because Cam is more likely to be able to make those throws. And it's just research that Dable hasn't done yet because he hasn't been on the field with Cam as much. How much do you factor that into the ability for Cam when the football games are being played to be a better quarterback of Dable learning what he has in Cam?
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it, and it's hard, right? I can't draw up the whole playbook after I get to know the guy because I can only get to know the guy this much before I have to give him a game plan, especially after I see him in a game. And also, I think there's a big, we had this conversation with them when they came in the door, Saleh saying, well, I don't want him to feel like he has to be Superman. And then Dayball saying, well, I like the Superman stuff. And how do you measure how to give him room to be Superman, or do those moments just kind of happen? All of that's kind of complicated. I think we'd all agree Callahan and his staff maybe tried to clamp it too much, and really emphasize the underneath stuff. And Cam is a hunter, like they said. And I think there's a lot to balance out there in terms of how do you let him be himself with the hunting plays, which are where he makes his money, really, with staying structured. And I think that's where Brian Daboll is going to make his money if he does with Cam what people want to do with Cam. I love this guy. Ice Pick says, I'm so negative about everything in the world. See, I brought up that the guy dropped 2 passes, which is a fact. And I'm negative because I brought up the fact. And I put that on the rest of you guys who are busy doing cartwheels about the 2 good catches. So when I just bring up the fact, hey, by the way, he also dropped 2 balls, this guy thinks I'm negative just for stating a fact.
I do think you're negative. I don't think that is it, like that is a reflection of your negativity.
You think I'm negative. So what are you?
skeptical.
Yeah, well, I'm skeptical too, and I'm honest.
I think growing up an Atlanta Braves fan in the 90s has made me very skeptical of sports success because they had all those good teams with all that great pitching and they only won one World Series. So every year I'd get my hopes up and then I get crushed.
They were this good, but they weren't that good. If you wanted to see that good, you had to look to the Northeast for a team that knew how to consistently finish. Your team knew how to win regular season divisional titles, and it didn't know how to win in the playoffs. Why did that make you skeptical? It should have just made you recognize what they were.
Well, in fairness, in 95, they had won, and then in 96, the Yankees hadn't won at that point. And I think that was...
I talked to you about fabric. Yankees have it in their fabric. They haven't had it the last 15 years, but in 96, they still had it in their fabric.
I think a decade turning hanging slider that just took the decade from the Braves and gave it to the Yankees. And then the Yankees in 99 were just way better. I mean, that wasn't even really a series. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but the skepticism. I just don't see it with Cam. And I want Cam to be the guy because I'm sick and tired of the Titans sucking so bad.
So I'm negative. You're skeptical. I think Cam has a perfectly good chance of being a top 12 quarterback in the league and that the Titans could win with that. You think he's got no chance, and I'm the negative one. I just don't get fans' inability to interpret that.
One guy says both of you guys are negative as can be. I don't know if I'd say that, but Paul and I definitely have some skepticism. One thing I am very skeptical about that you wrote a story about last week, and that is Bryce Wasserman. So Bryce Wasserman is Amy Adams-Strunk's son-in-law who always has these weird titles like chief of football strategy. Now then it was chief of staff and football administration. Now it is football counsel and head of research. And I don't even know what the hell that means, but luckily for us, Paul Kuharsky has details on what it is Bryce Wasserman does. And I'm just going to say it like this. As a Titan fan, I don't like what feels like growing influence of Bryce Wasserman because I don't feel like he's really earned anything, but he is married to Amy Adams-Strunk's daughter and the owner decides what's what. So tell us what you learned about Bryce Wasserman's role and how important is Bryce Wasserman to the Titans equation?
Well, I mean, I think by title and responsibility, probably not as important as some of us imagine, but look, it's a good thing to be in good with Bryce Wasserman. And it's a bad thing not to be in good with Bryce Wasserman, to hear everybody tell it. So football counsel, he deals with some of the legal ends of salary cap and that kind of stuff. He doesn't have anybody reporting to him. So they made him head of research, and they had a research and development department. Okay, so I thought, well, the research and development department's reporting to Wasserman. That's an interesting development. But then they went and changed that department to strategy and analytics. So he's head of research, but there is no research department under him. So he's basically Mike Borgonzi's research guy.
And on top of it, what bothers me is it feels like they're kind of grooming him to be an executive at some point. And he's out there on the field with gloves on, catching passes from the quarterbacks. And I'm like, it was one thing when Vrabel, would get out there and kind of hit the players a little bit. Like if I was a suit that hadn't played in the NFL and I was a lawyer and I was head of football counsel, again, whatever the fuck that means, if that was me, I think I would kind of just stand off on the sideline, not be like, hey, Levis, throw me the ball. And instead, that's what he's doing. It's kind of embarrassing.
Well, I'd say this too. Like, we know he's not that important because they've never come and pulled him off of the warm-up period, like with the phone, to say, hey, we need you to deal with this legal issue or this research issue. So I think that's a good sign. I thought last year when I wrote the most detailed thing that I've written about him a week before he married into the family, I was asking Will Levis, for color for this piece about him as a pass catcher. And he wound up saying, yeah, I'm really looking forward to going to the wedding this weekend. Bryce is a great guy, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, man, if you're an executive like that and you're friends with a player to the degree that he's not only coming to your wedding, but he's like talking about hanging out with you socially, just imagine the divide there. And like, well, shit, Will's hanging out with the owner's son-in-law. Maybe I ought to be hanging out with the owner's son-in-law, or the potential for divide. Now, I'm not saying this is unique to the Titans. There are a lot of there aren't that many in-laws. There are a handful of in-laws, but there certainly are plenty of family members, sons and daughters of family members that are involved in organizations. So this level of nepotism is baked into the league a lot. But the Titans certainly have it now with Salah's cousin, with Borgonzi's brother, and with Bryce Wasserman. I hate it. I think it makes people act in ways that they wouldn't otherwise act, be suspicious of who's talking to who about what. And I think it overcomplicates an organization.
Do you think that do you think Bryce Wasserman has meaningful pull because he can go right to Amy and he's maybe Amy's eyes and ears on a daily basis? And I think that does mean something. I just don't know if his eyes and ears are qualified enough.
Yeah, well, I have that same concern, and I know he's been influential on things. I also, I think powerful people who were friends of him or trying to guide him in the right way have made him very conscious of that. Like, hey, when you go home and kick off your shoes, if you talk about your bad day or, a negative interaction with somebody, you got to be aware of, that's different for you than it is for me or so-and-so and so-and-so, and really mind that, because you could give people reason to be scared of one bad day or one bad moment or whatever. So to what degree gets it. Here's the long range story, Jared. And you don't know the timetable on this, but Amy and the setup is for Kenneth to ultimately take this over. But Kenneth, I would not think, is inheriting Amy's share of this team. Blanche is. And if Blanche is inheriting it, Bryce is inheriting it. And I don't know what's the setup is for the long-term ownership of this team. But Bryce is around every day, and Kenneth certainly is not, though Kenneth has been exposed to a lot more. Are we set up? And I have no idea what Kenneth and Bryce's relationship is. What are we set up for in the long-term future of this franchise?
So I have heard gossip on that front that is not, anything more than that. And it's almost kind of conflicting. There's kind of one thought that could be, hey, Amy is kind of training Bryce Wasserman to eventually take over the team. But then there's another thought that is, when Kenneth had to raise money so that they could buy Susie Adams Smith out of her portion of whatever, that it probably went into writing that at some point Kenneth Adams becomes the controlling owner of the team. So I don't know exactly which time.
I would think for the time he's put in at league meetings and being her right-hand man, so to speak, that he would be in line for that. And she told me face to face when she used to speak that the plan was for him to take over. But this was before Bryce was, a thought in Blanche's eye.
So we do have the official A.J. Brown trade. It is now done. Apparently, the Patriots and Eagles had deep discussions. It's A.J. Brown for a 2028 first and a 2027 fifth. The Eagles have already posted a goodbye to A.J. Brown. So now it's done. A.J. to the Patriots, 28 first, 27 fifth. Do you think New England won this trade? Do you think Philadelphia won the trade? What is kind of your read on that now that we know what the compensation is?
Yeah, I want to see what he does, but I would like A.J. Brown. If I was confident in his health and I had Mike Vrabel, who has a relationship with him, he's got 4 1,000-yard seasons on top of each other. He's got 6 out of 7 1,000-yard seasons in his career. The year he didn't get there, he had 869 in 13 games. Guy's going to produce. Minimum. He had 5 touchdowns in the down year. He's had at least 7 touchdowns every season. You're getting big league production from A.J. Brown. You're getting toughness. You're getting swagger. And if you can manage that, and the Patriots definitely can manage that, I think it's a good acquisition.
I think the 28 first tells me that Philadelphia was done with AJ no matter what. And that last week, with all the talk, Ian Rappaport said they weren't close, and there was talk about maybe Jacksonville getting involved. I heard all that and thought Philadelphia is desperate to try to get another team in here so that they could try to leverage more out of New England. But I just think Philly was done with AJ, and I kind of want to know why. Was it as simple as he's older, he's hurt, we don't think that the value is there going forward? Or was it he just can't get along with Jalen Hurts, and we've decided we're going with Jalen Hurts over A.J. Brown? Which one of those reasons? Because if it was just the Jalen Hurts thing, then I think New England's got a shot at the Super Bowl with A.J. Brown. If it is Philadelphia looked at A.J. and said, those knees are a problem, he's declining, every metric that we have says trade him and get rid of that $29 million plus the $7 million he's owed next year, then it makes me think that New England may have bought a lemon. I just don't know which one it is.
I think it's probably some of both, but nobody in the league is better than Philadelphia at making a move like this while they draft Mekhi Levens and Eli Stowers, speaking of Lemon. And so if those guys can come out of the gate, well, got 2 guys that can replace his catches, and, you conceivably don't miss him, which that doesn't happen to normal teams, right? That happens to the Eagles and the Rams and the Chiefs and the cream of the crop teams in the league. Even Kansas City, when they dealt Tyreek Hill, they didn't replace in a familiar, they went a different direction and they made it work, obviously, and they won. Were they as electric a team? Not at all. The Eagles conceivably could come out as good or better.
I felt like Green Bay never really replaced Devontae Adams.
No, they didn't.
And yet it doesn't feel like every time that Titan fans, I think it's because Treylon Burks was such a bust, but every time that the Titans, we talk about trading A.J. Brown, it's like, oh my God, how could they be so stupid? And in the same offseason, Kansas City traded Tyreek Hill. I don't think they really ever replaced him. And Green Bay traded Devontae Adams, and I don't feel like they ever really replaced him. And yet they still found ways to win without those guys, whereas the Titans didn't win, although they were 7-3. But they did not win without A.J. Brown.
But if you look at the guys that were in the same situation as A.J. Brown in the same year, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, and Terry McLaurin, all of them got new contracts where they were. Now, Metcalf eventually moved. Deebo pretty much busted. McLaurin, I got to tell you, when we were in Washington a couple of years ago, he was as popular a player for the home team as virtually. He was so beloved in Washington, it was beyond my expectations. He was like the most popular Steeler at Heinz Field, that kind of feeling for McLaurin in Washington. So John Robinson not getting that deal done really, to me, looked worse when the other 3 teams stood fast and firm and got things done with their guys. And A.J. Brown was the best of the 4 of them.
You know what my theory is on why that trade actually happened?
Oh, I know you got something crazy.
Okay. I want to hear your reaction to my theory here. So I think what happened was AJ, and I know this, and I'll tell you off air how I know this. AJ was telling people that he was going to sign a 4-year, $80 million contract with the Titans. Like, he was convinced he was signing 4 years, $80 million, $20 million a year. And his agent, Torrey Dandy, was considered at the time the wide receiver agent. And I believe he had DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel as well. And he also had Chris Godwin and Mike Williams, who signed that year, each for $20 million a year. I think they both signed for $3 and $60. And then Hill and Adams got traded and signed these massive contracts. Then Christian Kirk signed that ridiculous contract with Jacksonville. And now it was like, well, 20 million's not good enough. So AJ thought the deal was getting done at $20 million. The way AJ tells it is Tory Dandy, his agent, told him to cut off contact with the team. Vrabel told him to be patient and that the deal would get worked out. And then AJ cut off contact with the team and said he wasn't going to show up to anything and he wasn't even going to step foot in the building. And I think Tory Dandy wanted a $22, $23 million a year contract at that point.
What I had heard.
And AJ, by not answering anybody's calls, again, Robinson, Vrabel, they're Belichick guys. They come from that. Oh, if Lawyer Malloy wants more money, screw him. If Richard Seymour wants more money, screw him. If Deion Branch wants more money, screw him. And so I think that attitude that AJ was trying to use, the little leverage he had, because he didn't have much, that kind of rubbed them and Amy the wrong way. So it was like, well, we don't want this head case with bad knees to have to give him $100 million. And I think they kind of got caught up in it, whereas San Francisco just told Deebo Samuel, I mean, you can bitch all you want and you can demand whatever you want, but we're just not going to do that because we can make you play on your last year and then we can franchise tag you twice. And so deal with it. And that's what the Titans should have done. But I think they got played by Tory Dandy, who was trying to get the big score and ended up getting the big score.
There's no way that the Titans can do any of that stuff and not factor in to a large degree that they were the suckiest wide receiver team in the league for 25 years and that they had finally found a legitimate guy. And then with the Burks move, it's just John Robinson ego thing. Like, I'll just do it again. And here we are, how many years later? Now, hopefully they're going to find him in Carnell Tate. But this team had massive wide receiver problems. They finally find one and they get 3 whole years out of him. It's just asinine.
So as a fabric guy, and you are referring to the lack of wide receiver success that the Titans have had in the fabric of the organization, do you think Carnell Tate bucks that trend? Or do you think that ultimately the organization that fails every wide receiver, or that every wide receiver has failed, will find a way to fail this wide receiver, or he will fail them?
No, I think he's got every chance to be good. Look, I make some judgments pre-draft. I like Carnell Tate coming in. I like Carnell Tate in the draft. I wish that there was a more clear, like, oh, you got to take this guy at 4. I'm trying consistently, and I talked about this in the lead up to the draft, to get off the speed thing. Listen, having 4.4 guys sounds great. There are a lot of 4.4 guys, the fastest guys in the draft, come in and suck. And so, but no matter if I like a guy, I don't like a guy coming into the draft, I don't pretend to be a college expert. And I don't think anybody that covers the league thoroughly or a team thoroughly during NFL season can really be expert on college players. And I don't pretend to be. I rely on other people who are much smarter at that than I am. But once they draft guys, they start with a completely clean slate to me, and I judge them off what I see, though I go much slower and I don't let 10 throws determine whether he's going to be good or not. I think he's going to be good. I think, I think he should be at X right from the start, right from the day. I think he can get off the line of scrimmage against press and make these contested catches. I don't know that he's going to run past a lot of people, but there are a lot of ways to get deep. And I hope he runs for more yards after the catch as he matures than he did at Ohio State.
I think the one thing that I will say that I feel pretty confident about after just those 2 OTA practices and those 10 catches, the fear that he's going to be Corey Davis 2.0, because Corey Davis wasn't a speed guy and was a high pick. I don't really have that, because I never felt like Corey Davis caught the football with the
conviction.
Yeah, like the smoothness with which Tate catches the ball. I mean, it's obvious that Tate, I thought the one-handed catch was kind of the more highlight reelish play, but I thought the one, I know he was going up against a grocery bagger.
I looked at it and his hands were strong as fuck.
I mean, I don't see Corey Davis making that kind of catch.
No, Corey Davis and Treylon Burks, there was a little I don't know, little's too weak. There's some softness to them.
Traylon Burks would jump up in the air to catch the ball.
Yeah, and that's a sign. And I talked about this with people way back when I was early in my career about your guy, Chris Sanders. Guys who leave their feet unnecessarily to catch the ball don't have faith in their hands.
What have you made of Robert Saleh through what you've seen around him and now seeing him on the practice field twice?
I don't think there's anything not to like so far about Robert Saleh. Seems in control, in command, organized. And I like that he, is making very clear, though people aren't listening to him, like this means nothing. And like, if you're looking, I like that he said, pretty early, maybe before the first one, like if you're looking for the big changes, you're not going to see them here at an OTA practice. This is an OTA practice. OTA practices are, pretty much the same. If you go around the country, you're going to see the same thing from everybody. People don't want to hear it, and nobody obviously took it in. But I mean, I get that question. You watch my pod a lot, hey, what were the first 2 OTA practices like compared to the first OTA practices under Callahan and Vrabel and Malarkey? As if I've burned those things into my memory, but B, as if there could be some huge differences. These are conscripted by the CBA, and there's only so much that can happen. Hey, what were the coaches communicating like? Like coaches standing around. Some of them are animated and loud, and some of them are not. Those are the big differences you can tell, right? Whether you like Nick Holtz or not, I think Nick Holtz is a decent man and was overcast in his role. He wasn't a screamer, right? Brian Daboll's a screamer. Fans tend to prefer screamers, But if you watch Bill Callahan and Carmen Brasillo coach the offensive line, you got to be a way bigger expert than me to see a huge difference in what they're doing right now at OTA.
I think, when I think about past OTAs, I'm reminded of Will Levis, and I wasn't there, but I remember I was on the air and Jim Wyatt put out his, what happened at practice report. And I guess Will Levis had thrown a ball intended for Josh Wiley, and it hit off of Wiley's hands, or what, it ended up in the lake. And I remember laughing about that with Chris Sanders, because I was like, have you ever seen a ball end up in the Cumberland? Like, have you ever seen that happen?
Not the Cumberland Lake.
And I'm like, have you ever seen that before? And we laughed, and he said no. And then the Titans called up, like, into the hotline of the radio show, and they were like, it bounced into the lake. It didn't get up the. And then Jim Wyatt took it out of his story. And yet I do think that was somewhat foreshadowing just how wacky and fucked up that Will Levis year was going to be.
Amulet Lake. Now, Will Levis' second day was not good. That Solomon Thomas. By the way, I mean, Solomon Thomas was not anywhere near that large at the beginning of his career, right? He looks like 2 Solomon Thomases. He is gigantic.
I think the idea for Solomon Thomas was that he was going to be a 4-3 defensive end, and I don't think that he ever showed the explosion to explode off the end. So they're like, yeah, we'll probably move you inside a little bit. Kind of like Henry.
Now he could be a 3-4 nose, he looks like. He's a big boy. But that interception to him was classic Will Levis. I mean, a little early pressure on him while he tries to dance out of it and throw to whatever back, and boom, Solomon Thomas steps in between. A guy wearing number 90 who fills every ounce of that big number, steps in front and has a pick 6, and you're like, oh, that's the bat. Levis looked pretty good in the first practice. I thought he did not look good in this practice. Then his other interception is into 4 guys, Keydrain, Callaghan. I auto-corrected to Keychain, and everybody's like, oh, we got a guy named Keychain. That's cool. So I caught it within the hour and got to fix it. So he's not Keychain, though that would be cool.
Are you as convinced as I am that Cordell Volson is their plan at right guard, and that Austin Schlottman is their plan at center?
I think Schlottman's like a done deal. I mean, I was talking to the PR director. He said I was making far too much about it, but first 9 guys that talk, we get the center who's competing for the job. No, he's not competing. And the guys behind him aren't even, it's not who you'd expect to be behind him. Schlottman's the center unless something goes wildly wrong. I'm not so sure about Volson. I think Volson and Slater are a more legitimate competition.
How much of a concern is that a guy in Schlottman has never been a starter really in the NFL? He's been in the NFL for almost 9 years now. And I think the most snaps he's ever played in a season is 500. And it does look like the Titans are saying, hey, this guy's going to be our starting center.
Look, center obviously went really awry for them, and they did pretty well filling in the depth chart across the board. Something is probably going to go awry. Center probably wasn't the best spot to go awry. But then when they got down to I knew they liked Luke Fortner, who had been with the Jags and then with the Saints, kind of bottomed out with the Jags. I think had a resurgence with the Saints. Would we have felt better if they signed Luke Fortner, who had a lot of starting ability? I've talked to people that said, Schlottman is going to be as good as Luke Fortner would have been. And so if you put it like that, I'm working on something now about, I think they've got too much emphasis on tough and smart. It certainly is what they're emphasizing on the offensive line. But wouldn't you agree with me? Tough and smart is their thing across the board. They want tough and smart. I want skilled and good.
Yeah.
And I know you can only talk about skilled and good so much because at a certain point you're taking from a pool where tough and smart is what's left. But you can be over reliant on tough and smart can only take you so far.
I think tough and smart feels like a choice. It's like, hey, we want guys that make the choice to be tough, and we want guys that make the choice to be smart. But I've met a lot of dumb people, and I don't feel like those dumb people make the choice to be dumb. So I think that that's a talent as well. I think that's their way of telling the players, hey, we want you to be tough. The last one I have to ask you about.
And by the way, I mean, for as much as things have changed, Mike Vrabel's best teams, what was their attributes?
They were tough.
Smart.
Yeah. The last thing I want to ask you about was Hendon Hooker, because we've now seen Hendon Hooker in 2 OTAs. There was some discussion that he could have been in play at number 11 in 2023.
We know where that was from.
What have you thought of Hendon Hooker?
He's been fine for a third string quarterback.
He stinks.
We've been fortunate that, he's a fourth string quarterback, really. Trubisky hasn't been around. And so we've seen Levis work second and Hooker work third. And neither of them I can't see them keeping 3 quarterbacks. So, you hope Levis, people really overvalue Levis in terms of what they could get in a trade for Levis. You hope they could get something for Levis, and Hooker's going to be on the street. If Hooker plays comparably to Levis, which I don't think either of us see happening, they're screwed because one of them is going to be cut and on the street and available for free. So you don't have to trade for the other one.
I think the market price for Will Levis is a 2028 6th is probably what somebody would trade for.
I don't think this trading 2028 things is going to be a thing. I think the market price for Levis is a 2027 move from the 6th to the 5th.
Well, especially if that's what Jarvis Brownlee and Roger McCreary ended up being. And even though they may have their faults, they're definitely not as bad at what they do as Will Levis is.
Jarvis Brownlee, a better football player right now than Will Levis. So there's a quarterback tax, I suppose, if you're quarterback needy. But if somebody's trading for him to be their third, he's probably on somebody's practice squad on opening day.
Go check out paulkuharsky.com, where Paulie will keep updating everything that goes on with the Titans, including his super depth chart spreadsheet and so much more. And the dives into things like what Bryce Wasserman actually does or who's going to play center and right guard and so on and so forth. That's paulkuharsky.com. Paulie, great stuff. Thank you to Sinkers Beverages. I will be back on a football show on Thursday with Nick Suss. And, of course, the Paul Kuharsky podcast. You can subscribe to that as well. PK, take care of yourself. We will talk soon.
Thanks, Still Billy.